Hi, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Sassy Sweets and Drinks. As you know by now, my name is Jordan. I am going to be making a peach pie, which is gluten-free because, well, pretty much everybody I know is gluten-free. So I'm just trying to be inclusive and make food that everybody I know can enjoy. So here I am just slicing up some peaches so that I can make the filling. And this recipe is super, super simple. And for the sake of this episode, because I love a theme, I am actually using local Colorado peaches. So tonight we're going to talk about Colorado cryptids. I didn't realize that Colorado had cryptids, but apparently we have cryptids here in Colorado, and we actually have one that is known as the quote Colorado cryptid. So that was actually kind of fun to find out. But before we get into that, I will do a step for this pie. I sliced all my peaches, put it in a pan, and I added water, just enough to go maybe a quarter of an inch up, because what I'll add next is some honey whiskey and some brown sugar. You can add butter to this. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I honestly might tonight, but the butter usually doesn't add in until later. So now that that's all in the pan, I'll put it on the stove, turn it medium high, and let it simmer just until you have a nice syrup. And while that goes, I'll get my oven preheating. That way I can start on the pie crust. And since, of course, this is Sassy Sweets and Drinks, I'm drinking. All right, so our first cryptid that I wanted to talk about was one that if you grew up or lived anywhere near a mining town, you've probably heard of them, Tommyknockers. And the lore behind Tommyknockers is that they're little elf-like gnome-looking men that hang out in mines and knock on things, basically. Depending on who you ask, they are malevolent, and then in some people's beliefs they are benevolent. They're chill. And it's funny, I read a couple of stories that they were saying that they would hear knocking on the wall, i.e. the Tommyknockers, and they would know if they heard that knocking, that the Tommyknockers were letting them know that the cave, or that particular part of the cave, was about to cave in. And that's when they're not being assholes. When they are, they would like to steal hammers and pickaxes and just random mining equipment that the miners had left. There were some stories of they would steal lunch boxes and stuff like that, which I thought was kind of funny. They're just snacky boys. But they're described as tiny little old men dressed in miners' uniforms, and all I could picture reading that were the 7 dwarves from Snow White, because it just seems fitting. It seems like that's what the Tommyknockers would look like, or that's what my brain told me that the Tommyknockers looked like. Yeah, I can say I've been to a couple mines and I've never seen them. I've been in old mining towns and I've never experienced one, so maybe you have to be a miner. So, I don't know. If anybody has seen a Tommyknocker or heard one, write in. I want to know what your stories are with these little miner dudes. Do they look like the 7 dwarfs from Snow White? That's the real question here. So before we get into our next Colorado cryptid, I am making my pie dough right now, and it's a really basic pie dough. Nothing too incredibly special about it, just flour, salt, water, butter. And as I said, this recipe is going to be gluten-free, so got gluten-free flour in here, same as what I used last week in the cupcakes. The measure for measure. So yeah, that's the pie dough and Tommyknockers. So the process I use for this pie dough is I put the flour in the bowl and I add the butter and I mix it with my hands until it's about pea-sized bundles of butter and flour, and then I add my salt and water. That's it. So I'm going to put the pie dough in the fridge for a few minutes just because it's hot, my hands are hot, and the butter got a little bit too melted. So I'll just wrap it in some parchment and pop it in the fridge. Alrighty, so I have my oven heating to 350, and while that goes and my pie dough chills, I'll just kind of tend to these peaches here. And I'm honestly kind of thinking I might need to add a little bit more sugar to them, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Alright, more sugar has been added, as well as some cinnamon, because cinnamon is my spice of life. And we'll talk about our second cryptid, and I think we'll end on the Colorado's main cryptid. So our second one that we have is a Wendigo. And of course, probably everybody ever has heard of a Wendigo. They're not unlike a werewolf, super creepy, very tall, sometimes mistaken as the not a deer cryptid, which I really know nothing about that. If you want to know about those, hop over to Morbid, because they cover the not a deer in one of their episodes. As for the Wendigos, in my own personal experience, and I do firmly believe that I have seen one, they are tall, have antlers that kind of look like the skin is falling off of them, or like they've just torn through somebody's laundry that's been hung out to dry. That's really actually how I describe it, as somebody's laundry. That I feel as if I've seen was tall, very tall, almost like a human-esque build, but with an elongated face, almost like a skull, like a elk or a moose skull, just size-wise, but the eyes were more forward-facing, but still to the side, and instead of there being like eyeballs in the eyes, it was more of a dark, terrifying abyss that looked at you. Yeah, that's how I describe it. Now, it was dark when I saw this and snowy, and there were a lot of elk around, but I've never actually seen an elk that looked like that, nor have I ever seen an elk standing on two human legs upright and followed my car with its head. Most elk don't do that. Also, this thing was like 3 times the size of any of the elk that were near there, and I've also never seen an elk this large. So the lore with Wendigos has Native American roots, and it's said that it's the story that I'm most familiar with, and the lore that I'm the most familiar with when it comes to a Wendigo, is that the Wendigo was once a man, much like you would get a werewolf, but it had its heart broken or something to do with heartbreak and betrayal and whatnot, and because of that its heart ran cold, so it now feeds on the hearts of people that remind it of the thing that broke its heart. That's the story I'm familiar with. There's probably a dozen other stories because most cryptids come with their own regional story, but that's the one I know. That's the one that was told to me as a child. And in pop culture, the Wendigo is pictured in Charmed in season 1, I believe, and it's also in Supernatural, also I believe season 1 of Supernatural, and that one actually takes place in Colorado. So there you have it, Colorado Wendigo. It's great. Also, it's terrifying and not something I want to deal with ever. So don't do that. My pie filling is almost done. It's getting a little bit thicker. Everything, the peaches are getting coated in this like beautiful caramely syrup, and it smells fantastic. I'll just keep mixing that. I'll probably add butter to it here in a few minutes, and that'll just give it kind of a creamier texture, creamier consistency. I'll turn the heat down too as well. I think turbinado sugar is really pretty. I'll sprinkle that over top. And into the oven at 350 for 25 minutes. For our last cryptid tonight, we are going to talk about the slide rock bolter. This one, the name cracks me up, and then when I was looking up pictures of said creature or cryptid, I was laughing even harder because it is a terrifying yet ridiculous looking critter. So the slide rock bolter in pretty much every resource has been described as like a whale looking creature. I saw in a few spots that he looked like a blue whale. And then in a couple pictures, he was drawn like the Moby Dick whale. So, which I also think is a blue whale. I'm not entirely sure. I've only read that book once. But this dude likes to hang out on mountains, but in every resource consistently it was said that he hangs out, the only mountains he hangs out on are at a 45-degree angle or more, but no less than 45-degree angles. He looks like a whale though, sure, and has like prongs at the end of his tail so he can hold on to the ridge. He was described to have like a dolphin-like tail, but instead of it like fluting and looking pretty, it has claws, like I don't know what they're called, but like the grippy claws from spy movies. And he just chills up on the mountain, on the side of the mountain, and like he just lays and watches and waits. And his favorite snacks are hikers, small animals, and people that are just lost in the woods. When he finds his next meal, he releases his tail claw and just yeets himself down the mountain. And while he's eating, he scoops up the people and whatever else in his mouth and noms it all down. And apparently he uses that momentum to like boom right up the side of the next mountain or the neighboring mountain so that he can just rinse and repeat. And it's also said that he's the cause of rock slides, that his meal times are what caused rock slides in Colorado. So I guess you have an answer for that. So I spend a lot of time in the mountains. I have never seen a slide rock bolter. It doesn't mean they're not there. However, I've never seen one, and I'm a pretty avid skier, so I've definitely been on some 45-degree angle mountains and steeper. Never seen one, never experienced one, so maybe I'm just not his flavor, I guess. But there was a tale that I read that a park ranger decided he wanted to try and end the terror of the slide rock bolter by setting up a decoy hiker that was made of like bombs or dynamite. And when the slide rock bolter yeeted himself down the mountain, he tried to scoop up this fake hiker and ended up blowing up. There's no record of this, so not sure that it actually happened. But maybe it did, and it happened so long ago that there is no record keeping, and it's just hearsay. But regardless, I think the idea of a mountain whale scooching around and nomming people down is actually quite hilarious, but also terrifying because I don't want that. But hey, maybe that's why we've had rock slides in the past. Colorado has a lot of a history of rock slides and rock slides taking out cars and families and hikers and avalanches, just causing skiers to be lost and never found again. Maybe that's the slide rock bolter causing an avalanche. We may never know. But that is it tonight for the cryptids, and the pie will be done soon. Alrighty, here we have our finished product of our gluten-free peach pie, which I guess is actually more of a peach cobbler. So there you go. Thank you everybody so much for watching, and tune in next week for some more spooky season. I don't know if I'll do cryptids or ghost stories. We'll see what happens. If you have any spooky tales, please send them to me. You can send it in the comments of this episode, or you can send me a message on Instagram at Sassy Sweets and Drinks. Have a great rest of your night. Bye.